2 lives, 1 hope. Sometimes, all it takes is a single act of kindness. Every night, more than 150 million people around the world have no home to return to. No roof to guard them from the cold. No door to close against the noise of the world. But homelessness isn't only the loss of shelter. Sometimes, it's the loss of hope. Hope can vanish in an instant, with a death, a debt, a decision. And when it does, the world feels heavier, smaller, quieter. This is the story of 2 people who lost everything, not in the same way, but to the same ache. He lost his roof. She lost her reason to wake up. And when their paths crossed, they rebuilt something neither thought they'd ever find again. Not perfection. Not magic. Just kindness. The man with nowhere to go. The park bench was his world. A chipped wooden seat at the edge of a city that never noticed him. The streetlights blinked overhead, the wind carried the smell of rain, and the noise of passing cars filled the silence that had become his life. Michael Turner adjusted his coat, torn at the sleeves, heavy with old dust, and wrapped his scarf tighter. He wasn't waiting for anyone. He was just there. Existing. Once, he'd been a carpenter. Hands that built homes, tables, shelves, things that lasted. Now, those same hands trembled when he held a cup of coffee. He'd lost his job when the factory closed. He lost his home when the bills piled up. And when his wife finally left, taking their daughter with her, he lost himself. The streets became his address. The bench, his bed. But beneath the dirt and exhaustion, a small ember still burned. He didn't know why he kept waking up. He just did. He didn't expect anyone to notice him again. Until someone did. The woman who forgot how to smile. A few blocks away, in a quiet white house with green shutters, Emily Carter stared at an empty chair across her kitchen table. A photo sat beside her teacup, her late husband, Mark, frozen mid-laughter on a summer trip. 3 years had passed, but time hadn't softened her loss. She'd gone through all the motions, cleaned the house, cooked dinner, smiled at neighbors. But grief doesn't disappear with chores. It lingers. It waits. Every morning, she whispered good morning, love into the quiet
Good
air.
morning, my love.
Every night, she whispered good night to the same empty room. The silence was unbearable. And yet, it was the only thing she had left that felt familiar. Her world had shrunk to 4 walls and 1,000 memories. She was alive, but she wasn't living. Until one small moment began to change that. The meeting, a sandwich and a stranger. It happened on an ordinary Tuesday. Emily walked through the park to clear her mind. The air was crisp, the trees half bare, and the world felt too big. She noticed him sitting there, a man in a torn jacket, staring into nothing. Something about him made her stop. Maybe it was his stillness. Maybe it was the exhaustion she recognized, the same emptiness she saw in herself. She hesitated, then walked to the cafe nearby and bought an extra sandwich and a coffee. When she approached, she spoke softly. "Hi," she said, holding out the bag. "You look like you could use something warm." He blinked, startled. "I'm fine," he murmured, out of habit. "I know," she said, smiling. "But take it anyway." He did. They sat together in silence, eating side by side. The air between them was awkward, unfamiliar, but alive. When she left, he whispered, "Thank you." She turned, nodded, and smiled. Neither of them knew it, but something had shifted. Small moments, growing quietly. The next morning, she walked the same path, maybe out of curiosity, maybe something more. He was there again. This time, she brought 2 coffees.
I'm here for you. You know that, right?
She sat beside him without asking. At first, they spoke about nothing, weather, coffee, the pigeons that refused to leave. But slowly, their stories began to surface. He told her about the life he used to have. She told him about the love she lost. She didn't judge him.
I lost my love.
He didn't pity her.
Years ago.
I'm so
In
sorry
each
to hear
other's
that.
presence, they found something the world had denied them: recognition. For the first time in a long time, both of them felt seen. Days turned into weeks. Coffee turned into conversation. Conversation turned into care. Emily started smiling again. Michael started hoping again. And the park bench became something more than just a place to sit. It became the place where two lonely worlds began to mend. The Toolbox, maybe it's time you start again. One morning, Emily arrived carrying a small metal box. Michael looked at it, puzzled.
You said you used to build things. Maybe it's time you start again.
You said you used to build things, she said. Maybe it's time you start again. Inside was a simple set of tools: a hammer, screwdrivers, sandpaper, tape measure. He stared at it like it was made of gold. No one had given him something that mattered in years. It wasn't just a gift. It was a statement: I believe you can still build. That afternoon, he followed her home.
Thank you. This is not less than gold for me.
Together, they fixed a broken chair, a loose hinge, a creaky step. As he worked, she brewed coffee and watched, the rhythm of his hands steady, purposeful. When he finished, she smiled. You did good.
You're doing great, honey.
He paused.
Almost there. You're doing great. Almost there.
It's been a long time since anyone said that to me. Seasons of healing. Over the next few months, small repairs became daily rituals. He fixed things around her home. She filled his days with warmth and words that stitched him back together. Neighbors began to notice, the widow and the handyman, sharing laughter on the porch. He found odd jobs, earned a little money. She found her evenings filled with conversation again. They weren't just rebuilding her house, they were rebuilding each other. The pain was still there, yes, but now it had purpose. They were proof that broken doesn't mean finished. One day, as they painted her garden fence, Emily said, "This place used to feel like a tomb." Michael looked up. And now? She smiled. Now it feels like home again.
Now it feels like home again.
The proposal. It happened in the soft light of sunset. Emily stood among the flowers, watering them. Michael approached slowly, fidgeting with something in his pocket. He'd been saving for weeks: small jobs, small bills, big hope. "Emily," he said, voice trembling. "I don't have much. But I have this heart. And it's yours if you'll take it." He opened his hand to reveal a small silver ring, simple, honest, perfect. Tears welled in her eyes. "Yes," she whispered. The sunlight wrapped around them, golden and forgiving, as they kissed for the first time. It wasn't the perfect love of fairy tales. It was real love, the kind that grows from pain, shaped by kindness, rooted in truth. The wedding. The little wooden church overflowed with warmth that morning. The priest's voice was gentle. The air smelled of wildflowers. And sunlight streamed through stained glass, painting them in color. Emily walked down the aisle in a simple white dress, holding a small bouquet. Michael stood waiting, nervous but proud. When they exchanged vows, his hands shook. When they kissed, the room erupted in applause. The man who once had no home now had a heart full of it. Outside, petals filled the air as they stepped into the light, hand in hand. The world, for a moment, felt still, like even heaven was watching. Morning peace. The next morning, 2 coffee mugs sat on the porch railing. The sun rose, the light soft and warm. They sat side by side, wrapped in a blanket, watching the day begin. They didn't talk much. They didn't need to. Peace doesn't shout, it whispers. Michael looked at her and smiled. You know, I used to think being rich meant having money. She looked back, smiling gently. And now? He squeezed her hand. Now I know it means having someone to share the morning with. The quiet evening. That night, rain tapped softly on the windows. Candlelight flickered across the living room. Emily leaned her head against his shoulder. He exhaled, content. You saved me, he said quietly. She shook her head. No, Michael. You saved yourself. I just reminded you that you could. He smiled. Then maybe we saved each other. They sat in silence, the glow of the candles reflecting in their eyes. Outside, thunder rolled softly. Inside, 2 hearts rested in peace. The walk, a new beginning. Morning again. The path wound through the trees, sunlight dripping through the leaves. Hand in hand, they walked down the road that led past their home and the little church where they'd said their vows. Neither spoke. They didn't need to. Theirs was a quiet joy, steady, deep, complete. At the top of the hill, Emily turned to him. Do you ever think about how we met? Michael smiled. Every day. I think about that sandwich. She laughed. That sandwich changed everything. He looked at her, eyes warm. No. You did. They walked on, sunlight wrapping around them like a promise. A simple truth. Sometimes, the smallest gestures hold the greatest power. A sandwich. A conversation. A name remembered. Michael Turner once sat invisible on a park bench, waiting for nothing. Emily Carter once whispered to an empty chair, waiting for no one. But one act of kindness changed everything. Now, their mornings began with laughter. Their evenings ended with peace. They had rebuilt not just a home, but a sense of belonging. Because compassion doesn't just heal others. It heals the giver too. And in a world that often looks away from the broken, their story reminds us, sometimes, all it takes is a single act of kindness to rebuild 2 lives and spark one enduring hope.